Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Catherine Bigelow film Detroit. This film takes place around the time of the 1967 Detroit police riots, which unfortunately killed many people, injured many people, and definitely put a lot of people in the position of really not being too impressed with how the police forces ran in the Detroit, Michigan area. This event really upset a lot of people. But in this movie, you guys, it's during the 1967 Detroit riot. Not only are riots happening on the streets or buildings are burning down, people are unhappy with the way that the police force is treating people and stuff. But there is an incident at the Algiers Motel in the area, and there's this really bad misunderstanding that happens where um, one of the black men in this hotel fires off a toy gun at the National Guard while the riots are happening. And this really upsets the National Guard. They're worried that there's a sniper somewhere during the riots that are out to take out the police force. So they send police over to the Algiers Motel right away. People aren't really talking about who's responsible for this. Um, and they really can't explain that it was a toy gun. Some of them really did not see what happened; they just heard the noise of the gun. So there's all this confusion, and they're worried that they're not trying to talk. That they're worried that they're don't want to point fingers and put somebody on the spot. So there's all this confusion, and there's a lot of really racist police officers that are assigned to this hotel, and they're willing to do really painful, harsh things to get information out of these people that are in this hotel. And it's just a crazy mess, a crazy misunderstanding over a toy gun that really just makes a loud noise and really doesn't hurt anybody. Um, so there was this huge confusion over this, and so the movie plays out with what happened before this incident, the events that happened during it, and the events that happened afterward, like the trials and who survived it and who was responsible, what happened to the police officers, what happened to the victims. So this film explores all these things over the course of the 1967 Detroit police riots. So overall, guys, it's hard to say that I enjoyed this movie just because it's such a brutal experience, but I felt, I guess a better way to say it is I felt immersed in this movie. I felt that that Catherine Bigelow really wanted me to feel invested in the situation, to feel really sorry for the people who truly were victims of this situation. It really was really awful that a lot of these innocent people who were at this hotel at the time that this happened, that a lot of them got hurt and killed really for no reason, really just over a badly bad misunderstanding of something that happened to make a really loud noise, something that people thought it wasn't. So you just feel really sorry for. Um, the really awful things that these people had to go through, the really awful things that these police officers were saying and doing to them just to get information out of them. It's just a film where I just felt really upset over the fact that all these things happened to these people really for just something really minor. But overall, for positives and negatives of Detroit, you guys, I really do think that this film captures the look and tragedy of this 1967 riot. I felt like I was in that time period, that I was um, kind of a invisible eye on the wall, kind of seeing all this stuff happening. I really felt like I was in there, and I really felt like I was in the time period because of the clothing and the way the buildings look and the way the interiors of the buildings look and stuff like that as well. It really does explore the tragedy too of just how awful this was for a lot of people involved. So I like how Catherine Bigelow captured the essence and experience of what this event was like back in the day. I also thought John Boyega's performance was very good in this movie. I also like how his character in this movie is very much kind of on both sides of the fence. And what I mean by that is he is a police officer, but he's also a part of the African American community within this riot. So he's kind of on both sides in the sense that he kind of has to watch what he says while also having authority, more authority than a lot of the people who are victims in this hotel. Um, he really was innocent in this whole thing, and he gets blamed for things that he didn't do. People accuse him of things just because he has a gun, and he's a security officer, so of course he has to have a gun for the job that he has. So I really thought his performance was good here because he really feels bad about what he did, and he really shouldn't because he really did the right thing. He was innocent. I just really felt invested in his character. I thought John Boyega gave a great performance of kind of everything that is entitled within the character that he plays. And like I was saying before, this is a very upsetting film. I just felt really awful that a lot of these innocent people really were just kind of affected by kind of a really, like I said, a really bad misunderstanding again. I really just felt upset that this happened to all these people. That these people really did not deserve this. The police officers are really, specifically the ones who were in the Algiers motel when this happened, really just did not know what they were doing. That really were using a really awful scare tactic just to kind of get what they wanted out of this. So just a very upsetting film. So, and what I mean by that is it's upsetting in the right way. Something like Schindler's List is, you're not going to feel happy after watching Schindler's List, but it's a really well made film that really makes a great point, just like how Detroit does as well. I also thought Will Poulter's character was just really brutal and really mean and really vile. You really did not like him. You really wanted to, out of all the people that could have gotten hurt in this incident, you kind of wanted him to be the one to be hurt. You really wanted him to really kind of get the consequences for his actions for what he was doing here, because what he was doing was just very, very bad. No police officers would ever do that to anybody. Just the way he was acting around these people was just really brutal, really mean, really racist. So just a really brutal character that Will Poulter had to play really well, and I'm sure it was kind of tough for him to get in the character for this movie because of the fact that his character was so brutal and mean to these characters. So huge thumbs up for Will Poulter for playing this character, but it's a very brutal character to watch on screen, and very intentionally so, the way he did. I also like all the old documentary 1960s footage that Catherine Bigelow was able to retrieve for this movie. I think it really was some real Detroit police riot footage that was retrieved from this event. And it really kind of adds, and it really does show just how well made of a film this is, because of the fact that the things they're showing on film that they had to make for this movie really do look very similar to the actual footage that was recorded from this event. So huge thumbs up to that. I love the old documentary 1960s footage that was used in this movie. I also like how Catherine Bigelow really plays around with her tight space environments. On the scenes where these African American characters are kind of pinned up on the wall and these police are trying to get answers out of them, I really felt like I was in there. It felt kind of claustrophobic and tight space that I really felt like I didn't have a lot of space to experience this with. So I liked how Catherine Bigelow kind of puts us in this situation with the characters. So as a result, the scenes that feel upsetting feel even more upsetting as a result. I also like all the character moments that these characters have in this movie. There's the characters that are in the Algiers Motel incident, the characters that are kind of the core problem of the incident, the victims of it, the aftermath of it, the people who were in the riot but not necessarily at the motel as well. I like how there was just a lot of character moments where the characters that aren't necessarily like the main focus of the movie, like maybe like the girlfriend or the girlfriends of some of these characters, like you really kind of understood where they were coming from on the scenes that focus on them, even though they aren't the main characters. I really liked how they had their own little individual moments, so you could really feel kind of whenever they did show up in the movie, you understood where they were at when this riot and event happened. For my negatives of Detroit, though, Catherine Bigelow unfortunately does use some shaky cam on occasion, and that's really too bad. As a result, a lot of scenes feel kind of blurred and unfocused during some of the action moments, in the moments where like the riots are happening and there's a lot of movement. So unfortunately, during some of the actual riot moments, which unfortunately is a huge focus in the movie outside of the Algiers motel incident, the shaky cam just really feels distracting in some moments. I also feel that Detroit was overall 25 minutes too long. I feel like if a better editor was in charge of this movie, I really do think a lot of these scenes could have been trimmed down and edited to the way that would have been more fitting for the movie being told. Because as the way it was, it felt like a very good director's cut for this movie that was about 25 minutes too long of what it should have been. Another negative I had with Detroit is I thought the replay value was kind of non-existent for this movie. It's definitely not a film that I could see myself watching a second time, just because it is very upsetting with its subject matter. So replay value, it's not that great with this movie. There's also certain sets in this film that felt really Hollywoodized to me. There's a scene where a character's trying to break down like this glass wall to that leads into a store that has items shown on the glass part of the store. You know what I'm talking about? Like they'll have like a bike and whatever the new items are featured at the front of the store. It looked very fake. It looked like all he had to do was kick it once and then the glass fell over. There's just a lot of scenes in this movie where you can tell it's just a set somewhere on a Hollywood lot somewhere. So as a result, I kind of felt pulled out of the movie because some of the scenes in this movie just feel straight out of a Hollywood set. But overall, I'm going to give Detroit an 8.5 out of 10. Really powerful film. I felt very immersed. Like I said, it's not really a film that you're really supposed to like necessarily, but I felt immersed in the experience. I felt sorry for all the victims that were hurt for no reason, just out of false accusations from this police force that was in charge of this. But like I said, the John Boyega performance, how upsetting the film was, Will Poulter's brutal character, the documentary footage used for this movie that was real footage too, the tight space environments, the character moments, but unfortunately moments like the shaky cam that really wasn't used very well in some scenes. The length could have been trimmed down quite a bit. Really not a lot of replay value for this movie, and some of the sets did feel a little too Hollywoodized for me for my own taste. But overall, 8.5 out of 10. If you're interested in learning more about this Detroit police riot from 1967, I think it is a very good movie. For me personally, I think Kathryn Bigelow's best film for me personally is probably Zero Dark 30. That's probably my favorite of her work anyway. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. Very good movie. Very upsetting in all the right ways. So if you want to learn more about this Detroit police riot from 1967, Detroit's not a bad way to go.